Mary, thank you very much for joining us again. We've just been reflecting on a year where day after day after day, we are kind of obsessed with your uncle. He manages to suck the oxygen out of the news agenda for everybody else. It's a kind of disorientating, swirling, weird world to be living in. Does it all come from his own personality, his own background?
Yeah, absolutely. And Andrew, it's wonderful to be with you on this very dark first anniversary. Donald is exactly who he has always been. I think the problem we're facing now, and certainly have faced in the last year, is that thanks to some deeply misguided Americans who decided to put him back into power, a corrupt, illegitimate majority in the Supreme Court who gave him an imperial presidency, and a feckless, weak Republican Party that has completely ceded its constitutional duties, Donald is not bound by anything anymore. And he's also realizing unconsciously that all of the power, all of the money he's getting from corrupt corporations and from grifting off the American people isn't enough to fill the black hole within him. So now he's trying to do that by stealing other countries. It's quite alarming. And you're right, it has been an exhausting, demoralizing year.
You talk about his supine opponents domestically and the black hole inside him. The big question I think world leaders are now struggling with again is it better to try to ingratiate themselves and compromise with him, or to stand up to him? That's the huge question. Gavin Newsom, who seems to be emerging as the main opposition voice in your country, has just been in Davos accusing European leaders of being spineless and pathetic for not standing up to him. And he said he's like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. You either mate with him or he eats you.
Well, that's evocative. I agree with Governor Newsom, but to be fair, I've been saying this for years. We have seen people capitulate. We have seen people try to make common cause with him time after time after time. The result is he gets more of what he wants. He feels more empowered to push the envelope further. He gets away with more and comes out the other end with his having accrued more power and the rest of us suffering for it. But nobody has ever stood up to him sufficiently.
But presumably, the more he gets, the more he wants. Somebody called him the hungry caterpillar as well. And so if he's successful with Greenland, potentially he goes for Canada as well, and so on and so on. There is no limit to this.
No, the reason he's going after Greenland again is because he got away with kidnapping a head of state from Venezuela. And what outcry has there been? What sanctions have there been? None. So again, we see what happens in those very limited instances when people do stand up to him. He can't handle it. We saw that in Detroit at a Ford plant when an auto worker called him a pedo protector. And the president of the United States gave him the middle finger and swore at him. The man has no impulse control. If there were sustained opposition against him, if European leaders stood up to a person and refused to capitulate, we would be seeing a very different situation.
That's a fascinating challenge. Let me ask you domestically. We've seen all these scenes of ICE people breaking into cars and horrible confrontations around America. Are we beginning to see a turning of the opinion polls about him? Are we beginning to see even MAGA people having second thoughts about what's going on?
Yeah, Donald is underwater in every category. I mean, I don't think we should kid ourselves that this is going to be over anytime soon. And I think his base is all in. But we are seeing deterioration in terms of independent voters, unaffiliated voters, and undecided voters. So I do believe that we're facing a turning point, especially since an airborne division from Alaska has been ordered to Minneapolis, which is unconstitutional. More and more people are opening their eyes. However, because the Republican Party is willing to allow Donald to continue unimpeded, the administration is going to become more and more driven to invade more American cities as if they were hostile foreign territory.
Yeah, and looking at the economics, the old phrase from the Clinton era, it's the economy is stupid. Food inflation is going up. Energy prices are going up still. You've got the midterms coming along. If things are looking difficult for him, do you think he would actually cancel those elections?
I think he'll try. I think part of what's happening in Minneapolis is a dry run to see if he can create a situation in which he can invoke the Insurrection Act or declare martial law. So Minnesota is an incredibly important test case for the Trump regime. And we just have to hope that there is a limit to this Supreme Court for the overreach of Donald and the Trump regime. So far, there hasn't been a line that he can't cross as far as the Supreme Court is concerned.
In terms of trampling across red lines, do you expect him to try to run for a third time?
I think it's more likely that he just won't leave. I think that's the likelier scenario.
Just won't leave the presidency. How could that be?
I think, well, that's what Maduro did, I believe. And I think that he's perfectly capable. The only reason that didn't happen in 2020 is because there were still a few people in his administration who weren't willing to go along with that. But we are in very different territory 4 years later.
So even without an electoral mandate, he would try to carry on the presidency. That would be a moment of kind of revolutionary challenge for the United States of America.
Well, I actually think we're going to see more revolutionary moments before then. And quite frankly, we need to find out what's going to happen this year with the midterms. So we need to be prepared for anything, because as we've seen, there are no lines Donald won't cross.
I wonder about American public opinion being the proper pushback. I saw a poll recently suggesting a very, very small number of Americans, I think about 4%, would favour a military incursion into Greenland. And presumably, surely at some point, those numbers start to tell on Donald Trump himself.
Perhaps. But again, we see with ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, an increasing majority of Americans are against those agencies and what they're doing. And the Trump regime, as Donald always does, is doubling down on the tactics that Americans are increasingly against. So I don't necessarily think that anybody's opinion matters to him at this point, because he keeps getting away with it, which may prove to be more pivotal in how he proceeds than what people think of him.